Mike, I have a quick request before we get into this episode. Podchaser, the podcast industry's leading database, is currently exchanging donations to Meals on Wheels for reviews on their webpage for podcasts that you listen to. So I'd like to ask for a quick favor from you. If you could leave us a review there, and I'll drop the link in the show notes, that would be greatly appreciated. For each review you leave on an episode or on a podcast, Podchaser will donate 25 cents. Now that can really add up with just a spare minute from everyone listening. Okay, that's it. Let's get into the episode.
All right. My name is Jim Shoopack, and first I want to thank you, Michael, for having me on the show Silent Journeys. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak on really what I mean is my story, but it's the story of unfortunately of millions of people and even billions of people when you consider the entire world. But my story began, I would say, it was in February of 2001, so about 20 years ago and 2 months ago, if you will, to be more specific, where I had kind of felt definitely not myself. For those people who know me, they know I'm very upbeat. I'm very happy, positive. I love to laugh. I appreciate life. I love life itself. It's and everything life and you know provides us and just relationships, friendships, what have you. But about 20 years ago, it had felt like someone had pushed out who I just described and basically replaced that person with someone who was sullen, someone who was just in a very dark place, someone who, for example, every second took a minute, every minute seemed to take an hour, every hour seemed to take a day, every day seemed like it took a week, like it was the never ending day, every single day. And I literally, like, I hoped to get to the nighttime so that I could just sleep, and there were times I just didn't want to wake up. I was like I wanted to permanently sleep. And what it was like, there was times where um, I was very angry for no reason. Like if someone might look at me the wrong way, what the heck's wrong with you? What are you looking at? They're not there's nothing there that I needed to really concern myself with, or I might just get angry and blow up for no reason. I would get anxious, and at this because it's anxiety as well, where maybe someone looked at me the wrong way, and I blew up them, and then all of a sudden, what might happen is in my mind, I might think, well, that person hates me, and I would avoid that person. And then I say, well, he's friends or she's friends with this person, so now they're not going to like me because they're going to talk behind my back. And then before you know it, I've made this huge mountain out of a molehill. And I'm living like this every single day. Like I had thoughts of suicide. I had thoughts of like crashing my car into a tree. It just, that's not like me. Now, remember, this is 20 years ago, and I'm in a fantastic place, fortunately, right now. But at that point in time, I wasn't. I just very depressed, very down. I had no self-esteem. I mean, like I had no purpose in life. Nothing. I did not enjoy any activities really. Barely anything that I like. Just I wanted to just permanently sleep. I'm a Catholic, and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And I mean, I'm telling you, it was a constant prayer every day. Every day, it was just God, take me or make me better. I don't care what you decide. I'm not gonna. I'm not going to. I'm not going to do it, if you will, as far as suicide is concerned. But I strongly felt like, and I think that upbringing for me really helped to save my life because it kind of kept me on a certain path. Um, and I just remember talking to God and saying, look, one or the other, you make the choice. I don't care which it is. And lo and behold, then, I mean, honestly, Michael, one day I had an experience that completely changed my life. And again, you have to remember I'm Catholic. I never used any drugs, any illegal drugs, prescription drugs, of course, for asthma. For I have a seizure condition, which I'm going to talk about as well. Um, that came beforehand, things like that. But when I say it was my darkest day, it was my darkest day. And that night, I had what would be considered an out of body experience where, again, being Catholic, I saw the Holy Family. That's Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Literally, I remember being out of my body staring at them. And there was no word said, but it was just like this thing communicated to me that you're going to be all right. Things are going to be fine. But no words were communicated. But I knew that just them being there. And when I woke up, that like basically almost a minute too later, I don't remember how long the experience was. I knew I had the fear of God because my heart was beating out of my chest. I mean, I'm sure my heart rate would have been over 200, if not higher. I don't know what's possible, but that's where I was at. And I remember like going into bed, every stuffed animal I must have had accrued from the time I was a youth. I think I put in the bed with me and I slept with that night because I was just like, oh my gosh, what just happened there? And I swear to you, like the next day, a friend of mine who himself had depression had told me, hey Jim, are you okay? Because you haven't been acting yourself recently, um, and I'm just a little bit worried about you. And I said, you know what? I'm not okay. There's something wrong. Like I'm having thoughts of suicide. I'm just I get angered quickly. I don't want to wake up. I want to sleep. Don't want to get wake up. I have no like there's no purpose in life for me anymore. And he said to me, I remember him telling me it, and he has unfortunately passed away of a heart attack years ago. Wendell Fredericks is his name. God bless him. Um, he told me, he said, Jim, sounds like you have what I have, clinical depression. He said, why don't you look it up? Because it sounds like you have a lot of the symptoms. And I said, all right, I'll do that. And I wanted an answer because I'm living inside my own head, and this is for 100 days now, Michael. From February through, we're talking about, let me see, yeah, till May, early May it was. Um, and I remember looking it up, and I had every single symptom. And I had never been so happy in those last 100 days because I was so scared out of my mind of what was going on in my own brain. And after that time, I was like, wait, this can't be right. And I looked up another one for another website for the symptoms, had the same ones. I looked up another website for the symptoms, they had the same one. I looked up another website. I mean, it was like I almost wanted to tell myself this can't be real, that how I feel has a name. And it was. And I was like the weight of the world that was on my shoulders, just all of a sudden, some of it came off. And I was like, wow, okay, this is what I have, but I need to get diagnosed. And I'm not gonna lie, asking for help was scary for me. It was um, because of the stigma that exists with mental health. It was a scary place for me at that point, and far scarier was the 100 days leading up to that because I didn't know where do I go for help for this. I mean, if I go to the hospital and I say I think I'm going out of my mind, what are they going to do? Like I don't know. I didn't. I was scared of what came next, I think. And the same thing goes with my doctor. I used to be youth leader at my church, and her kids were part of my youth group. And I emailed her privately, and I said, hey, can you see me at the university, because she was also a one of the staff um, doctors at the university, East Stroudsburg University, where actually I did my undergrad and my master's degrees. So I went over there, and she saw me because I didn't want to go to see her in her office because I was afraid of just the whole stigma thing, the anxiety, the depression was kind of like, oh my gosh, he has depression, he has anxiety. What, there's something wrong with him. You're going to the doctor, there's obviously something wrong with you. But I couldn't get that through my head that it's okay to have depression because one fourth of all people are going to have a mental health challenge in their entire life. But that being said, so I went to see her at the university, and I remember saying, Dr. Villani, I have clinical depression, but I need you to diagnose me. I printed out like 40 different papers of the symptoms from a bunch of different websites. And I was like, I have this, like every single one. I have it. And and I could still remember it, like telling her, like she said, why do you think you have it? And I said, well, Dr. Vani, like, I feel like somebody pushed, that calm, caring, positive, upbeat person that I was out of my body and replaced it with someone who, like I had said before, Michael was suicidal, who just lived in his own brain. Like every day seemed like forever, like a month almost, like a week, like just forever. That I wanted to sleep and never wake up, that I would get like angered at the littlest things, that I would cry like for no reason. There was no, but I would cry. I felt like crying for absolutely no reason. It's okay to cry, but like there was no reason for my crying. Like I had no interest in anything in life, but and she said to me, you know, first of all, she said, Jim, I'm proud of you for coming in because I know it's not easy for you to come in. And it wasn't. It was not easy to set the appointment up. It was not easy for me to talk to, like to just kind of say like, yes, I need help. And especially because of the stigma of depression, anxiety. But she said to me something I'll never forget. And she said, "Well, Jim, I want you to know you're not the first person that I have ever diagnosed with clinical depression, and you most certainly will not be the last." And that made me feel a lot better. Not that I'm happy that other people are suffering with this, but that I wasn't alone. That there were other people who did have this particular, who had this journey, for lack of a better word, or like your show's called, a silent journey. That's really what it was. Um, and as I go on, we had created a plan. It was a plan of recovery, really, a plan of overcoming. And part of that plan was because there were times I couldn't get out of bed. I mean, just for me to get out of bed was a huge accomplishment, huge accomplishment. And she said, "Well, I'm going to, with your permission, I'm going to give you an antidepressant." And we started on it. And it really helped. It helped a lot. This particular one. And I know for everyone, you have to be, if you are, not everyone is in favor of antidepressants, and I understand that this is everyone's personal choice. For me, it's a choice I needed to take, that I said yes. And what happened was we took this one, and it worked. And 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, it gets in your bloodstream, and that's really when you have a feeling of, and it worked. But she also said, "I'm going to strongly suggest you go to talk therapy, because taking medicine is only half the battle. There's obviously things that could be on your mind that you don't even realize it, that you need to get out to someone." So I did go to talk therapy for about 3 or 4 months, and it was weekly, bi-weekly. The woman was fantastic. And the same thing goes with counseling, similar to the medicine. You may not gel with certain counselors, talk therapists. I did. I was very blessed. I was very fortunate to gel with the first one, and it worked out for 3 to 4 months. She came to a point where she's like, "Jim, you're doing really well. I don't think you need to come back." She said, "My door's always open to you, but as long as you're okay with it, I think you're fine." And I kind of felt the same way toward the end. Maybe the last, maybe 2 or 3 visits, I was kind of like, I think I'm okay now. I was like, I think I'm in a good spot. But I can recall being in the office. I can't even remember over what, crying in her office for whatever reason. But after I did, I felt better. It was just like very, for lack of a better word, very therapeutic. Um, from that point on, I have to kind of go back a little bit. And during those 100 days, I'm going to give a little props to our golden retriever, who he's passed away, unfortunately, about 10 years ago, named Sonny. Because when I was really going through my 100 days of hell, like I like to call it, um, if you have a dog, you have a cat, you know that they're very in tune with your feelings. Just like I have one laying on my lap right now, he seems to be very in tune with my feelings. All of my pets do, dogs, cats. And what Sonny would do is he would put his nose almost right up to mine, because I would be laying on a sofa all day, no interest in doing anything. And it was almost like this understanding where he would come up to me and say, "Look, I need you to take me for a walk." But it wasn't really that. It was really more like, I need to take you for a walk, but I need you to put the leash on me so that I can do it. And we had this understand, and I would do it. And he kind of knew, and we did that. Walk around the block a couple times, one time, two times, times, four times. Before you knew it, I felt pretty good. I was like, "This is great. I feel pretty good taking walks and being with Sonny, being with my pup." Um, but at the same time, then I was like, I want to go for a longer walk. It wound up being a mile. And then after that mile, I said, I want to try to like maybe jog a little bit, like a slow walk, pardon me, a slow run, or a slow run or fast walk. And I did. And at that point, it was really, I had an endorphin high, like unlike ever before. It was like my own body creating a happy drug, because really that's what it is. And at the end, I said, I want to keep doing this. And I wound up doing 2 miles, wound up doing 3 miles. And then I trained for a 5K, which was cool. I liked it a lot. The running community is amazing, amazing. And in my case, it's more like walking, but they're still part of the runners community. And what I'm about to tell you is more of a do as I say, not as I do. I trained for a 5K. And at that point in time, I started to train for a marathon, which is 26 miles. So I went from a 3 mile to a 26 mile. Again, this is not the proper way to do it. You should go 5K, 10K, um, pardon me, half marathon, full marathon. But I think that was just me telling the depression that I control you, you don't control me. And I did train for the marathon. I finished Steamtown Marathon, which is up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. If you're familiar with the television show The Office, that's exactly where it is. If you're not familiar with the show, it's still where it is. It's in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and I finished that. And after a while, after the pain went away of the lactic acid after the first marathon, I was like, I want to do another one. Like, and then it dawned on me the one time I was getting interviewed on TV station locally that I wanted to do 100 marathons to get back the 100 days I lost to depression. Obviously, symbolically, I can't get them back for sure, figuratively, but symbolically, I can. Um, and because I remember telling the journalist, I said I'd rather do 100 marathons in a row than have to go through depression again. And at that point, it kind of dawned on me, well, why not do 100 marathons? So that is my goal, my end goal. So I've completed, thank God, God willing, I finished 21 marathons, so all 26 miles. Every marathon's 26.2 miles or 42 kilometers. And in 2014, I finished 3 marathons in 3 months. In 2016, I did 4 marathons in 4 months, and that's the most I've done as far as consecutive over months. I mean, I have my wife to thank, who's like the number one marathon supporter, who goes all over God's green earth. My pups who come with me, which it's cool, and I have to say as well, like as I run, I have like a run over depression shirt because that's part of the organization that I kind of helped to found, which is just kind of putting a face on the name of mental health, like people who are going through their own challenges. And I have some wonderful friends who've had their own journeys in mental health where they've been very open with sharing them and helping with the social media aspect of it. So they've been, I mean, fantastic in doing that as well. And so me having that support, like I've obviously, my wife being supportive, but having others like my friend Ann who does some of the social media. I have a friend Kelly, um, other people who have done stuff, my brother. And one thing I've noticed is that the 100, like my goal is 100 days, Michael, or 100 marathons. I apologize. But I saw that more as a silo. And what I mean by silo is that's my goal. But what I found out is that silo has been kind of destroyed, but in a good way. And it's become so much bigger than a simple silo because I've had people come up to me and say, you know what, because you talked about your battle with depression, you know, I have a loved one who basically had a plan to die by suicide. And when they heard how you felt, they said, oh my gosh, that is exactly how I feel. And they were able to put a name on their depression and get help. And those people, are the one I'm talking about. One is married, he has children. I have another friend who I did the same thing. And he had felt maybe not as intense of a depression, but he didn't feel himself. It was definitely a depression of some sort. Maybe he called it more of a melancholy, but it was a milder depression. And he started talking to his dad, and they opened up a conversation, and he started going to therapy. Um, and he started to also like take medicine, but I think he's off of it now. I've had other people who maybe I haven't talked to them in years, but I'm very open about my battle and my bout, whatever you want to call it. But I posted on Facebook that I was on a show. I've been blessed to be on a number of different podcasts now talking about mental health, and people will private message me saying, hey, my so and so, he's talking about suicide and he hasn't done that before, and I'm growing really nervous. Like, can you any suggestions? So it's almost like I've been blessed to be that person who, if someone needs help, at least is willing to reach out, and I'm extending that olive branch to them. And I've when I see those successes, for lack of a better word, where people can live a more full life, a more authentic life, more life that they're supposed to live, that just helps to motivate me to keep doing what I'm doing. So that's the big thing for me, at least right now. I will say, like, for example, long and short of it, one thing that's helped me, and going back to when I was youth leader, is I was blessed because I do speak Spanish fluently. is we've gone on service trips to the country of El Salvador, Nicaragua, Mexico, and Honduras, and all of them are Spanish speaking. So I would go and I would basically be the translator for the group because pretty much most of the group was only English speaking or very basic Spanish. And one experience I had I'll never forget was being in Nicaragua on Lake Nicaragua. I met an individual. His name was Juan, and he had a child. He was about the same age as me at the point in time. I was going for my master's degree, and we're just making conversation. And I remember talking to him, and I said, so tell me about yourself. What do do you go to school? What do you do for a job? You know, and I just remember him saying, well, I don't go to school. I said, oh, I said, well, where did you go to high school? Like, did you go to around here? He said, no, I didn't go to school. I was like, what do you mean you didn't go to school? Like, where did you go to elementary school or middle school? And then he just basically flat out said, no, I never set foot in a classroom. I had, when I was 4 or 5 years old, my parents couldn't provide, enough for me. So for my family, the family, his siblings, so I had to go out and like help pick coffee or help pick whatever um, to survive. And it just boggled my mind because that's a real problem. That gave me perspective. Now, mental health is a real problem too. But what I'm saying is, I liken things into third world problems and first world problems, and that those experience, and I could go on and on and on and on and on and on and on about those perspectives that I've experiences I've had, but that's a big one. Um, just because here I am thinking to myself, like, if we lose electricity, all right, well, I've a candle. Maybe I just sit in silence. But you know what? I have a roof over my head. I have my dogs. I have my wife. We have food that we can eat. Well, some of the people that I met during these trips, they don't have any of that, nor will they ever have the opportunity to know where their next meal is coming from. Even I remember in a school in the same trip, I believe it was Nicaragua. I saw a kid who had food coming out of his shirt, like it was a pocket, and I remember I kind of like kind of did a double take. And I said, like, why? Hey, I'm just curious, like, why do you have the food in your shirt? Why didn't you eat it for lunch? And he said, well, I'm taking it home for my family because, see, when I go to school, they give me lunch here, but they don't get food at home. We don't have food. So I always take some of my lunch and I bring it home for them. And it's like these perspective things are like just boggles my mind, because I can't wrap my head around it. But that's kind of given me perspective as far as living life, calling it post depressive, post of my 100 days of hell, put it that way, where I kind of look at things now as, is this a first world problem or is this a third world problem? Is this something that is a life or death thing, or is this something that really I need to not worry about because it's not worth my time? And I won't lie, there's times I do get caught up in it, but then I take that step back and I realize I need to just say, okay, this is not a third world problem. This is a major first world problem, and I need to just relax and not worry about it. And I will do that. Going back to these trips, Michael, which I have to say were, I believe everyone should go on a service trip to a third or fourth world country, or there's even a third or fourth world in the United States. I've been to Appalachia in West Virginia, incredibly poor. I've been to Camden in New Jersey, across from the bridge from Philadelphia, incredibly poor, to work with people who were homeless because of drug or alcohol addiction. People in West Virginia who similar situations. So I really think that gives you perspective on what is truly important. But going back to El Salvador, one of my heroes is a saint named Senior Monsignor Oscar Romero, um, patron saint of El Salvador. He actually during the 70s he spoke on behalf of the poor, the financially poor. I mean, these are the poor and destitute who had nothing. And he unfortunately was murdered for speaking out on their behalf in 1980. It was March of 1980, March 21st, 22nd, 20th of 1980. And I was able to go to the church and basically stand in the same location where he was killed. I was able to see the clothing that he wore. I still saw the bullet stain. I was able to go to the apartment where he lived. I was able to see his tomb. And he was known as the reason I mention this, is he's known as the voice for the voiceless financially. You know, like really and when I mean financially, I'm not talking about someone who, is earning even 8.50 an hour. I'm talking about someone who never has a job, never went to school, and never will go to school because they were never given that opportunity. So it's kind of like that, where we have a welfare system in the United States. El Salvador does not have that. A lot of the third world doesn't have it, so they can't say, well, here's money to go on welfare temporarily till you get back on your feet. They don't have that. That's not a possibility. That's not an option. Um, so you can see why so many people are looking to move to the first world to get out of that situation. That being said, though, I kind of use Oscar Romero as like a inspiration for me, where I liken myself as maybe the voice for the voiceless of those suffering from mental illness, from mental health challenges. Also, we have three rescue pets at home, two dogs and a cat who are rescues, and also like myself to be the voice for the voiceless for the rescue pets, because really the only thing wrong with a rescue cat or dog is that they've been let down by a human. So it's like they need a voice, and why not help be that voice? Because if you do have a pet, you know that people out there, like, they create such love for you, such unconditional love. Like, my goal is to be the person that my dogs think that I am. That's my goal in life. Because it's just, you get home and they're so happy to see you, and it's like, oh my gosh, like whatever cares you have just went away, for the most part. But like that's kind of like most of the story there, Michael. I do want to start with one thing too before I forget. Um, when I was 13, and this is going back to the depression, and I apologize, this is kind of a little bit, skewy here, but just please bear with me because this is very important. When I was 13, I had a seizure, the grand mal seizure, the whole convulsing thing. In fact, it should have killed me. I was turning blue. My brother found me convulsing in the living room. He told my dad, and my dad picked me up. I don't remember any of this. All I remember is waking up on my bed. And that being said, there's no history of any seizures, epilepsy in my family, at least none that I'm aware of. Well, that was when I was 13. Now, talking to my neurologist, who I've gotten to know pretty well over the years, because I've gone to see him, fairly regularly when I was monitoring the blood, the Depakote level in my blood, what have you. I asked him, I said to him, do you think that it could have been um, the epilepsy, that because there's already chemical imbalance that's pre-existing, that may have played a role? And we did a little sleuthing, if you will, like, and he said, yes, it could have been part of that. He said, well, it's February. That's a very dull month. Like, it's a very depressing month in Pennsylvania, Eastern Pennsylvania, where I'm from. Very depressing month. And at that point in time, I was youth leader, but I was getting it was kind of stale. I was getting burned out with the job. So it was like those three things coming together situationally could have created that, just enough to kind of put me over the edge, for lack of a better word. And that being said, so going from there, where I couldn't take two steps out of bed, to doing 21 marathons. And now, I'm very humbled to say, in September of last year, I completed my doctorate in educational leadership from Drexel University in Philadelphia, and they were named the top program in educational leadership in 2019. So it's just, when you really believe in yourself and you surround yourself with good people. I mean, for me, it was I'm Catholic, and I have a very faith based life, and I have good people that surround me. Like, one of my mottos is that you're the average of the five people you surround yourself the most, and sometimes it might just be one person that you need to believe in you. Um, you can do some cool things, like, and I say that very humbly, because you know if it were up to me, I don't know if I would still be here, but I am, and this is my goal, this is my message, this is what I aspire to do. So you're only here, one time to make a difference, and you want to do the most with it. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I'm excited to say, like, having finished the marathons, and hopefully in 2022 and in the fall, I would like to do another one, and just continue from there, because the 4 years I was doing my doctoral studies, it's just way too much. I couldn't train for much of anything. So we did a couple half marathons, my wife and I, but it was more like a slower thing. But that's pretty much it. Like, just, if I can give anyone any advice, is just believe in yourself, but at the same time surround yourself with good people. And if you're that person who someone's reaching out to you, who has depression, just be there. You don't need to fix them. They don't want to be fixed. They don't want to hear what your suggestions are. Because I know if someone would have said when I was at my worst, well, you need to do this, and oh my gosh, I won't say right now, Michael, what I probably would have told the person, because it's not nice. We'll just leave it at that. But I will say they just need someone to be there. They just need someone to basically know that you have their back. They just need someone who, maybe one day that person will say, hey, you know what? I'm thinking of going to the doctor. That's your opportunity to say, like, hey, I'll go with you if you want. I'll sit in the waiting room and then we can go for lunch afterwards, or we can, something along those lines. So that's your opportunity to really be there for that person. Because once overcome it yourself, I don't, let's just say, like, I love Spider-Man. He always, Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. And I strongly believe that, but like, that's pretty much my story, Michael. I can't really think of anything else right now, although please ask questions, because I'm definitely open to them. And anyone has any, I definitely am willing to respond to anything that you might have.
Well, thank you so much so far. Jim, I did have one question. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about what it was like to grapple with your mental health and thoughts of suicide in relation to your faith.
Oh, that's a very good question, Mike. Like, for me, like, I we've had, unfortunately, in my family, I've had a cousin who died by suicide. This was when I was younger. But I think for me, one of the things was seeing how it affected my grandmother, who's the one who saw him. And I'll never forget her. And she's passed away now 13 years ago. And I'll just never forget what it sounded like for her. Now, and that's one thing that I have to, like, I just remember, is like, someone's going to have that voice, someone's going to have that pain, someone's going to, and I can't do that. And but I still remember, like, it was just a large, like, just really is a constant prayer, like, every day, just to help me get through the day. Was just like, you know I would do the Hail Mary, I'd do the Our Father, I would do, but it was, I still remember it, like, just please either make me better, God, or take me. I don't care which one you decide on. But that was really the big thing, was just kind of giving my cares to God, is really for me what it was. Like, they oftentimes say that's what you should do. And maybe I didn't realize I was doing it, because I was so in, like, focused on myself. Because when you're in depression, at least for me, I couldn't process much of anything else. But I knew that the more I talk to God, at least in my belief, the more He listens. And that's why I think I had that experience that I did, and at that point, I realized, like, when I did have my experience where I, saw the Holy Family again, I think that was almost like them telling me, like, we hear you, man, like, you're gonna be all right. Like, and that, like, that's really what it boils down to for me. And even though I know not everyone shares the same belief, I can still live the way that God would want me to live, as far as hopefully creating that support for other people. Um, and just the way He was there for others, just trying to do the same thing. And that's why I look at, like, someone again like Oscar Romero, who was, he died for his beliefs, and his beliefs were to help those who were the financially, and I mean, like, destitute, not even poor, destitute. And I kind of look at people like that, who are more, I guess, human, for lack of a better word, because they were human, but in their drive, and I kind of take that, and I want to be more like that person. And trust me, I'm not a, like, I'm no way, shape, or form perfect. I mean, maybe if it was up to my dogs, yeah, then they would think I am, but I'm no way. Like, so it's just a matter of trying to be better than I was yesterday. Now, I don't know if that answers your question, Michael. Kind of, sort of, not really.
Well, it's an answer I'll certainly take. I think um, it's been a really great conversation so far, and I think it's good to wrap up here. So I guess I just want at this point to say thank you for being willing to come on here and share your, silent journey and talk about your past and be so vulnerable with not only me but everyone that listens to this podcast. I'm
Well,
sure I can speak for everyone that listens. Thank you.
no, my pleasure, Michael. And for those of you out there who are listening, if you're like, I don't have anyone who cares about me, well, guess what I do? Because I wouldn't be putting myself out here like this if I didn't. So keep that in mind. Like there are people out there, you may not even know that person, like, but feel free, like I can easily provide social media to you or something like that. I don't know, if you'd like. Um, and I can't diagnose anyone. I'm not. I mean, I'm a doctor, but not that type of doctor. And I could tell people how I felt. Like if someone is interested in saying like, "Hey, did you feel like this during your depression?" I would be more than I'm very open with that. I'm okay with answering that. Like I've had people who have asked me that same question, who said, "Hey, I feel like this, or my kid feels like this. Did you ever feel like that?" And I'll tell them, "Oh yeah, I totally did. Oh, that's I felt like that all the time." And then it kind of opens their eyes or their parents' eyes or their loved ones' eyes to like, oh, they're not telling me something that is far, like something that might be out in left field that they're like, no, there's no way that could be. It's like, no, this is very real, and I think that's important. And because of the stigma too, Michael, I have to say, like, when I was on a podcast yesterday, we were talking about there's this new thing called a PET scan that can actually measure the brain activity that shows if a person's depressed or not depressed, which I think for people who don't believe in depression, for lack of a better word, it's showing quote unquote proof of brain activity between both. So it's almost, I don't want to call it an X-ray. It's like a more intense CAT scan, for lack of a better word. So there's pretty cool um, technological advances, there's our word, that are being made, which I think are going to help maybe eradicate the stigma little by little, as well as people such as yourself who are, opening your podcast to allowing people such as myself and others to speak out. So I thank you for that.
Well, I guess thank you and you're welcome. But to anyone that's listening, if you want to help amplify Jim's story, please share this with someone you know. Um, Rate, review, whatever it is that you can think of to help spread the show and provide these stories to more people. I would truly and deeply appreciate it. Thank you so much, Jim, once again for being on the show, and thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you folks for listening as well and for having